A 1901 mother smiles with her children. But look closely at what's missing from her hands. Dr. Rebecca Hayes had examined thousands of photographs in her 12 years as a photographic conservator at the Charleston Museum. But the image that arrived in February 2024 contained a detail so small, so deliberate, that it would uncover not just a tragedy, but the most perfect revenge story she'd ever witnessed. A revenge that took 53 years to complete. A revenge so quiet, the oppressor never even knew he'd lost. The photograph itself seemed innocent at first glance. The Williams family in their Charleston home, July 1901. Father proud in a dark suit, 4 children neatly dressed, faces lit with carefree smiles, the sunlight streaming through an open window, a typical summer afternoon. Yet Martha Williams, sitting at the center, held a secret in plain sight. Her elbow-length white gloves, out of place in the heat, out of place in a family portrait meant to capture joy. Rebecca leaned closer, magnifying glass trembling slightly, recognizing immediately that these gloves were not fashion, but a shield. A veil concealing decades of pain, scars deliberately hidden, evidence of a cruelty intended to mark a child forever. Records whispered the truth. Martha Johnson, age 15 in 1865, enslaved by Robert Johnson, punished for daring to run toward freedom, hands burnt in heated shackles, wrists marred with tissue damaged beyond repair. The Civil War had ended, but the physical scars remained, a permanent brand meant to instill shame. Yet here she was, 36 years later, dignified, prosperous, elegant, the very picture of triumph, her family thriving around her. Each stitch of her gloves, each delicate fold, a symbol of patient vengeance. Martha had transformed every attempt to break her into fuel, turning the violence of her oppressor into the architecture of her victory. She built a life so full, so radiant with education, wealth, stability, that Robert Johnson, who had once imagined her permanently broken, became irrelevant in the world she created. Rebecca traced the census records, marriage licenses, Freedmen's Bureau files, each discovery layering the story of a girl's suffering into a woman's deliberate power. Martha's marriage to Samuel Williams, 9 years her junior, her careful cultivation of respectability, her relentless work to claim dignity and control, everything was part of a silent, unyielding plan. And yet, the brilliance of her revenge lay not in confrontation, not in physical retaliation, but in a life meticulously designed to outlast and outshine the man who had tried to own her. Her home, her children, her reputation, they were weapons sharper than any sword. The gloves, white as untouched snow, were her signature. They hid scars that told of torture and resilience, pain and triumph, defiance and secrecy. Each glance at them was a reminder of how patient, how deliberate, how quietly devastating her victory had been. And the most haunting truth Rebecca realized was this: Martha's revenge was absolute but invisible to the world until now. It demanded recognition, yet required silence. Power wielded subtly, yet ruthlessly. It was a reminder that survival alone could be a declaration of war, that dignity, when fully claimed, could annihilate an oppressor without a single strike. As Rebecca stared, she understood why the story needed to be told. Why it would leave every viewer stunned, shamed by the audacity of patience and the art of triumph through life itself. And here's the call. The world must witness stories like Martha's, must confront the quiet, patient fury of those who survived, must honor the resilience that transforms trauma into victory. So pause, take a moment, and hit that subscribe button, because every share, every view, every story preserved ensures that revenge that shapes history isn't forgotten. Martha's story is proof that the strongest power is the one wielded silently, patiently, brilliantly, and now it's your turn to witness it. Rebecca dove deeper into the records, searching for the moment that set Martha's revenge in motion. What she found was a Union Army hospital record from March 1865 that made her stomach churn with anger and disbelief. Patient, Martha. Colored female. Age approximately 15. Treatment for infected wounds on both hands and wrists caused by iron shackles. Patient reports being restrained as punishment for attempted escape. Shackles were applied too tightly and left on for extended period, causing tissue damage and infection. Wounds show signs of deliberate burning. Shackles appear to have been heated before application. Heated before application? Every word screamed cruelty, the calculated, deliberate kind that only someone determined to leave their mark forever could commit. Robert Johnson hadn't merely restrained a child, he had intended to imprint terror into her body and soul. The smell of burning flesh, the echoes of her screams, the infection creeping through fragile tissues, they were his signature, meant to brand her as property, a permanent reminder of ownership. And yet, within the pages of those sterile hospital records, Rebecca could sense Martha's resolve forming. The wounds that were supposed to break her became the catalyst for a lifelong strategy. As doctors dressed the burns and prescribed laudanum for the unending pain, Martha made a silent vow. She would survive. She would build. She would conquer. She would turn these scars into shields, these chains into blueprints of a victory Robert Johnson could never anticipate. From 1865 to 1886, Martha labored in domestic service, learning, saving, observing the world she had been denied. She learned to read. She learned to write. She learned patience, calculation, and subtlety, the tools of a revenge far more enduring than violence. Rebecca discovered letters and church records revealing the architecture of Martha's plan, how she refused early marriage, choosing instead to cultivate independence, reputation, and dignity, how she approached Samuel Williams, a man 9 years her junior, only when her plan for a prosperous, unbreakable life had reached a threshold of stability. Every step was deliberate, a chessboard laid across decades, designed to outmaneuver the man who believed he could destroy her. Reverend Thomas Grant's letter confirmed it. Samuel knew of the scars, and yet loved her not despite them, but because they testified to her courage. And so Martha's revenge evolved into life itself. Each penny saved, each household established, each skill mastered was a calculated strike, unseen yet devastating. Rebecca could feel the pulse of genius in Martha's patience, revenge that doesn't roar, but whispers, grows, multiplies, and finally blinds the enemy with the inevitability of its power. By the time Martha married Samuel Williams, she had constructed a fortress of independence, dignity, and social standing. She had turned her scars into a declaration. You tried to own me, to brand me, to break me, and yet here I stand, stronger, wiser, wealthier, loved, untouchable. Every decision in those 21 years, every act of restraint in the shadows, was a carefully measured escalation, a silent war waged with the tools of life itself. And the rehook kept coming. Each census record, each Freedmen's Bureau file, each church entry whispered the same truth. Martha was not the victim Johnson had intended. She was the architect of her own legacy. Rebecca's heart pounded as she realized the full magnitude. This was not revenge for the moment. This was revenge that spanned decades, patience sharpened into brilliance, scars transformed into evidence of invincibility. And the ultimate weapon? Her life, her choices, her ability to thrive publicly while hiding the evidence of her suffering, all while Johnson's name faded into irrelevance. As the museum's fluorescent lights reflected off the photograph and the magnifying glass, Rebecca knew she had to share this strategy, this blueprint for silent triumph, with the world. Between 1886 and 1901, Martha Williams executed her revenge with the precision of a general and the patience of time itself. every decision a calculated blow against a man who had tried to erase her existence. From the moment she married Samuel Williams, she treated life itself as her weapon, building a home that could not be rented away, a family whose very existence defied the cruel logic of slavery, and a reputation that demanded respect from a society that once sought to deny her every dignity. She bore 4 children, Ruth, David, Clara, and Sarah, each born free, each nurtured in a house filled with love, learning, and resilience, untouched by chains, unscarred by fear. Every bedtime story, every meal prepared, every hand she held was an act of defiance, a proof that the system which had tried to subjugate her could not touch the world she now commanded. By 1900, the Williams family owned their own home on East Bay Street outright, and Samuel's carpentry business flourished, supplying the city with furniture and craftsmanship built on skill and integrity, a stark contrast to the legacy of violence that had once tried to claim Martha's hands and spirit. Yet it was Martha's own presence, the way she carried herself with quiet authority, that completed the revenge Johnson never anticipated. She never spoke his name. She never told her children about the heated shackles, the infection, the burns. Her silence was a weapon as sharp as any sword. Every public appearance, every visit to Morris Street Baptist Church, every photograph taken was meticulously staged. White gloves covering the scars, dark dresses that commanded respect, a posture of unwavering pride. The white gloves became her signature, her declaration. I am not broken. I am not ashamed. I am victorious. The community saw only elegance, propriety, and strength, but beneath the fabric lay the invisible story of defiance. Rebecca traced diary entries, letters, and newspaper clippings showing that Martha's life was a series of tactical maneuvers designed to thrive in a world that had tried to deny her basic humanity. In 1895, she wrote, "My hands ache, the scars throb when the air is damp, but my children laugh freely in ways I never could. I am living proof that what tried to destroy me has made me stronger." Each detail, the house, the family, the respect she commanded was an act of revenge more devastating than any confrontation could have been. And then came July 14, 1901. The day she commissioned a professional photographer, not casually, but with the purpose of immortalizing her triumph. Martha sat in the frame, surrounded by her children, wearing the finest dark dress, perfectly coiffed hair, and her white gloves, a calculated emblem of power and control. The photographer, Harrison Studios, understood the weight of the gloves and captured them prominently. They were not merely fashion, but the silent testimony of decades of survival, endurance, and victory. That smile she wore, radiant and unforced, was her final strike, proof that she had turned pain into legacy, trauma into a dynasty, and oppression into irrelevance. Robert Johnson had tried to brand her as property to reduce her to scars, but here she was, living, thriving, and untouchable. Her revenge wasn't explosive. It didn't need to be. It was quiet, patient, and absolute. Every detail of Martha's life was a calculation, each choice an arrow striking true decades after the crime had been committed. Rebecca could feel it through the lens of history. The elegance, the family, the gloves, they were not symbols of submission, but of ultimate conquest. And the lesson reverberates. Revenge can be art. Patience can be a weapon. Dignity can be a fortress. Subscribe now and witness how the most perfect revenge doesn't destroy. It builds, it thrives, it outlives the oppressor, and it leaves a mark on history that no one can erase.
Martha Williams proved that survival, strategy, and quiet brilliance can be more powerful than any fury, and now her story belongs to all of us.
But every revenge comes with a price, and for Martha Williams, the cost was silence. A heavy, private burden she carried for decades, one that haunted her even in the joy of victory. Martha died in November 1918 during the influenza pandemic at the age of 68, having spent 53 years meticulously orchestrating a life that Robert Johnson could never touch, yet never allowing her own children to see the scars that were the foundation of that triumph. For more than half a century, she wore white gloves in public, hiding the burns that testified to her suffering and survival. Her family knew dignity, prosperity, and love, but they did not know the pain that had forged it. After her funeral, Samuel gathered Ruth, David, Clara, and Sarah, finally revealing the truth about the shackles, the infection, the burns, and the brave escape attempt of a 15-year-old girl who had dared to dream of freedom. The children were stunned, flooded with grief, anger, awe, and an understanding that their mother's silence had been a conscious choice, a shield to protect them, but also a barrier that kept her pain private, eternal, and unshared. Ruth wrote, "When Father told us about Mother's hands, I felt a mixture of grief and amazement. I had admired her propriety, her elegance, but never realized the depth of what she endured." David reflected years later, understanding that the distance they felt from her was not coldness but courage. Martha had chosen to spare them from the shadow of her trauma, to let them grow in freedom, and to claim her life in triumph. Clara noted, "She won everything the man who enslaved her could never imagine, but the victory was lonely. She bore the scars, the memories, the weight of revenge alone." Every diary entry, every hidden thought revealed the internal struggle. Martha loved her children, yet the very act of revenge demanded she hold back part of herself, that she construct walls no one could cross. The white gloves, preserved by Ruth for decades, became both symbols of triumph and emblems of isolation. They represented a victory so perfect that even her family was partially excluded from it until death revealed the truth. Rebecca Hayes, studying these records over a century later, realized a profound lesson. Revenge, even when executed flawlessly, carries collateral costs. Martha's meticulous orchestration had obliterated her oppressor's legacy, yet the price was intimacy and the full sharing of love with those who mattered most. Her story is a haunting question to all who witness it. Can one achieve total triumph without sacrificing the ability to be fully seen, fully loved? And yet, it is also a testament that even the loneliest battles can create the most enduring victories. Subscribe now, because stories like Martha's remind us that true power often comes silently, invisibly, and that the most devastating revenge can leave the world in awe while exacting private costs that teach us what resilience, patience, and courage really demand. On July 14th, 2024, exactly 123 years after the photograph was taken, Dr. Rebecca Hayes stood in the Charleston Museum of History, unveiling her exhibition, Hidden in Plain Sight: The Stories Our Ancestors Chose Not to Tell. The centerpiece? Martha's photograph enlarged to 6 feet tall, her white gloves preserved in a climate-controlled case, a silent testament to suffering, triumph, and patient revenge. Visitors stared, tears forming as they read about the burns, the decades of concealment, the deliberate life Martha built to outshine her oppressor, and the courage it took to do so without ever letting the world or her children see her pain. An elderly woman whispered, "My grandmother always wore long sleeves in summer. Now I understand why." A young girl studied the gloves in awe. So beautiful, yet hiding a story I will never forget. Months later, Rebecca received a package from Martha's great-great-granddaughter, Jennifer Williams Thompson. Inside were Martha's daily work gloves, practical and worn, a reminder that the white gloves were only for the world, a symbol of dignity, control, and victory. The exhibition became permanent, teaching thousands about revenge that doesn't destroy but outlives, about choices that cost something yet prove everything, about the power of patient triumph. Martha's story resonated across generations, illustrating that survival, strategy, and unwavering dignity can be more potent than anger, more enduring than violence. Her white gloves weren't hiding shame, they were hiding the crime of another, and that smile, captured in 1901 and now displayed for the world, was a declaration of revenge perfected. Silent, patient, absolute. Like, share, and honor stories like Martha's because they teach that true victory isn't about retaliation. It's about building a life so full, so brilliant, and so untouchable that the oppressor becomes irrelevant, and history itself recognizes the genius of survival.